was going to say tray table.
Welcome to ScapeChatz. This is episode 31. I'm Alan, and I'm here with a disgusting Hodian bat thing that goes by Magellan. This week, we watched Season 3, Episode 16, Revenging Angel, and Episode 17, The Choice. Now see here, Revenging Angel was written by David Kemper, directed by Andrew Prouse.
What are you doing?
And it aired August 10th, 2001. What am I doing? I'm changing up the intro, fam. What do you want from
Now
me?
see here. Come
Now
closer,
listen up,
Sonny.
folks. Come sit by the fire as we talk about a cartoon episode of a weird show. Sunny. Yeah, Revenging Angel was not the episode that I expected it to be. First of all, I want to say that last week I said that this was going to be the episode where they start to bring the crews back together. I was wrong. Neither of these episodes were that. I guess The Choice kind of led into that, though. We're getting there, but I misspoke, so whoopsie, it happens. But I liked Revenging Angel kind of a lot because it wasn't the episode that I thought it was. And I posited this theory to you, Magellan, last night. I feel like maybe Revenging Angel is the type of episode written by people who know what it's like when you do a TV show and they're like, oh, in this episode, everyone's a cartoon or everyone's weird. And instead they were like, no, let's play with that. Let's do interesting things with the cartoon instead of just make it funny. But I'm curious what you thought.
I think that's, definitely they had this idea for a silly device and they didn't want to go pure silly. I'm wondering by this point what other shows had done cartoon episodes. That's my one question or clarification of that point.
That's a good point, because it's become a more common thing, I guess, since this show. But during the run of the show, it wasn't exactly rote just yet. So I think that's just like, it's less that they know that has happened before, and more that Farscape has already been a very subversive show, and it's just doing that again.
Yeah, but I think I just want to give it credit for being both subversive and also innovative in some way.
Yeah, Farscape is always innovating. So what did you think of the episode overall?
I liked it. I think it's going to be easier for us to talk about than other episodes, just because I don't think we're going to have much to say about the actual cartoon, what happened in the cartoon sequences. Kind of a nice little break in the other stuff that was going on to watch silly, funny cartoon stuff. I appreciated that we got some substantial Dargo and Jewel character development here.
Heck yeah.
Which is something I was not expecting to happen.
And it came fast and furious, too, because the pace of this episode is really all about, like, we need to get you to the point where the cartoon stuff is jumping back and forth. Because the way it starts is Dargo and John are just on the ship, on Dargo's ship, which is on Moya. And it's the ship he's had for a while that we've seen before, but we never really gave much credence to. We're like, oh, it's just a ship he has. And he very quickly is like, hey, you might have just broken my ship because like something goes wrong, and I can't have you sabotaging it because this is all I have. I lost my son. Or my son, lied to me. My wife, whatever, future
says,
wife left me.
John, I have nothing. I have no wife, no son, no home, nothing. I have been forced to manufacture distractions in order to live.
Which is such a immediate oof, they're just saying everything right now.
Yeah, at the beginning of this scene, he says some line that's like, he says. Talking about all the trial and error that he's put into this, and then he's like, well, I haven't had much else to do. And I was thinking, if that's the only mention of his sadness that they make, I'm going to be a little frustrated. And then a minute later, he's yelling about his entire character problem.
Yeah, he just goes down his whole arc. And I appreciated that because I feel like Dargo's stuff has been present but not explicit for a little while. Because we talked about, in a recent Moya episode, how it feels like he's living on the ship because it's the only comfort he has. And he's like, well, I'm here, and, everything kind of sucks, but it's easier to be here and comfortable than somewhere else new, because my life is constantly in flux right now. So he has this ship, and he wants to use it to, be his outlet. And it gets messed up, and a piece of debris falls on John as they start getting into a tiff, and John gets knocked out. And I thought, like, I kept trying to be like, okay, when does this episode flip and become all cartoons? Maybe they, like, go into a wormhole, and then, whoopsie, we're in the cartoon universe. But, like, that was exactly how I kept expecting it to go. Mm-hmm. But they did this really smart thing. And I think the most Farscape thing about it is that it, instead of, like, oh, the cartoon stuff is not important, or, like, the cartoon stuff is just jokes, it is a very clear visualization of somebody's internal struggles, of John's internal struggles. Right. It's actually interesting. The Farscape Illustrated Companion doesn't have any notes in the main chapters about this episode, except the summary, and then it says, like, there's a whole section later in it devoted to how they did all of this. But basically, we've said the most of the plot already, because basically, Dargo pushes Crichton into the crates, rendering him unconscious. The Growler, by the way, is the name of the ship. Very cool name for a Dargo thing. And then with Moya and Crichton still unconscious, because, yeah, Moya gets knocked out because of the Growler's, like, malfunctions. The crew discovers that the alien ship is on a countdown to self-destruct. The hangar doors cannot be opened, and the crew's only chance for survival is stopping the countdown. Meanwhile, Crichton is fighting for his life, and the clone knows that he too will die. Trying to give Crichton a reason to live, the clone suggests that he should take revenge on Dargo, and in his weakened mental state, Crichton finds himself battling his friend in an animated world. So, like I said, the cartoon stuff isn't just for funsies. It is totally like, hey, here's the different ways that Crichton could handle his problems right now, and here's how he could cope. And everyone is coming into his head in different ways and being like, hey, here's one way to do it. I never believed that Scorpius... I never, like, what does Crichton actually want to take revenge on Dargo for? What would he ever want to do that for?
Yeah, that's the one issue I had with this episode. Like, I really liked the setup that we're kind of doing this meditation on different ways to resolve conflict, especially because you and I have talked a lot about how Farscape resolves conflict, or at least did, especially in season 1, much differently than other shows, that they usually go towards a more diplomatic solution or a more thought-through solution than pure violence or things like that. And it's not like these people ever have a smart plan that goes the way that they want it to either. But in terms of the inciting incident, it did not seem like Dargo was really trying to hurt John very much at all. He just, like, pushed him, and then he happened to get hurt by these crates. So it was kind of flimsy to believe that Dargo was trying to kill him.
Right. All of the other motivations for, like, what John could do sounded totally reasonable, you know? One of them suggests that he talk it out. One of them says you got to be smarter than him. Pilot, in an incredibly appropriate turn, says you should run and keep running until he gets tired, which I didn't realize how smart that line was until later, when I was like, shit, that is Pilot's best skill, is getting away from things. So of course, like, when he sees conflict, his natural default state is like, yeah, get the hell out of here, and they will get tired, and then that's how you succeed in life, is run from your problems. Very appropriate Pilot moments there. I also just wanted to bring up that there's like an EKG that Crichton is having on him or something whenever he goes into the switches, and I thought that looked like a Windows XP screensaver. It really did. It was just like a bunch of multicolored, like, hills and valleys on a 3D screen. And then, so this is very important that we mention this quickly. The first scene where we go into Crichton's head and Scorpius is talking to him, and then Scorpius, like, goes cartoony for a second. Crichton is wrapped up in Terry. And if people have been listening to ScapeChatz from the beginning, Terry is the weird, shimmery gold blanket cloth that they use on the show every once in a while when someone is, like, being in recovery or in Rigel's room. And it's my favorite blanket ever. And it was in this episode and the second one that we watched this week, so I was very happy to see the return of Terry.
Yahoo!
Yahoo, indeed. But then, so the other weird thing, just real briefly, was, like, that scene was followed up by Dargo getting so mad, because, again, Lux and Hyper Rage, that he threw his Qualtha blade off the ship.
Yeah.
Or, like, off the side of the ship.
Yeah, into the engine area.
Into the poop hole.
Right. Yeah, it's another... This is kind of some nice season 1 rerun stuff for us right now, because we got Terry back. I've got some stuff to say about translator microbes later, and we're again starting an episode with the device that Dargo's angry. Because we just...
It did feel like a weird callback in that way.
Yeah. And that scene where he throws the blade is so... It's just so silly because he tosses it and then there's the slow motion like... Oh. I don't think they cut back to people staring in slow motion, but it felt like they did. Like, it felt like they cut to people being like, Dargo...
No, because it immediately cuts. It immediately cuts the pilot being like, "What? Why did you do that? That was a bad idea." And you're like, "Oh, he'll probably get it back. Like, it's fine. You don't lose your titular weapon or your signature weapon rather in this show. That's not." Again, I call everything fake dramatic tension. I don't know. That just felt like well, why did you're just angry? Now we just gotta go get that back. Like, it actually, in a weird way, felt realistic. Like, you get mad and then you do something stupid and you're like, shit, now I broke that thing. I gotta go fix it. Like,
yeah, right.
When you get like petulantly mad, you tend to do things that you regret immediately afterwards.
It's kind of odd that he didn't immediately want to go get it.
Yeah, he's just like, I guess
I don't have a Qualta blade anymore.
And then, of course, as the plot dictates, the one way to save the day is to have a Qualta blade that plugs into a little slot on the growler.
And just that. I just want to cut ahead for a second to the moment where the ship telling him the artifacts. And he's like, well, one of 3 artifacts. Of whatever thing. I'm going to just read them because they have dumb names. Artifacts. Boom, boom. He's like, okay, predetermined artifacts, singular to Luxon heritage. The ancient freedom text. That's very rare. And Oracan's prayer amulet. This is hopeless. And then the thing says Qualta blade. And then...
You're like, oh.
There's that cut where it's like a partially transparent reminder shot of the blade like flipping through the air. And it's Dargo's like looking up. It's almost like it traverses his forehead and his eyes follow it. That doesn't happen, but again, it feels like it does. Where he's like, oh no, what did I do?
The one thing I needed.
It's just silly.
And like the fact that all of that stuff is taken very seriously really strongly juxtaposes all of the stuff going on in Crichton's head, which is very silly and like not lighthearted because a lot of it is actually like, hey, my friend hates me. How do I work out this conflict? But he has that first scene with Harvey. I always want to call him Scorpius, but it is Harvey, where Scorpius is like, and there you go, I called him Scorpius again. He goes, I'm just gonna mix the names up.
Yeah, go for it.
It's like a little word pizza. He's like, oh, what? Find a reason to live? John's like, I got plenty of reasons. And then Harvey is like, then give me the Letterman list, which is like a weirdly esoteric reference. And I guess because it's in John's head and he definitely watched a lot of Letterman. That makes sense. Yeah, because David Letterman does like top 10 lists of everything. Right. That's been the thing he's been doing since the beginning. And then John is like, Earth, Dad, pizza, sex, cold beer, fast cars, sex, Aeryn. And then there's a beat, and he's like, love. You're like, dog, you said sex twice. Come on, and pizza's in there. Like, love is number 10 on that list. Also, that's only 9. So, sex counted twice, so it's technically 8. So, Crichton, you messed up. That's not technically a Letterman list, but whatever. I like that. Yeah, John has these priorities that I can relate to. That's nice to hear. What is this line I have here? Hey D, softcore overload. Oh yeah. Dargo calls the problem with the growler. He's like, oh, it's going into softcore overload. And I'm like, Dargo, you can't just say words like that. It's like it wants us to shut it down, but I don't know how. Like, softcore overload is a really good name for like a band. Mm-hmm. And then we get into the like different crew members talking to Crichton in his head, and I really, really, really loved everything that Pilot said. Talking about like, well,
the way he said it too was great.
Yeah, it's very like real talk. Like, all right, there's a lot of real talk in both of these episodes where people are just rapping about their honest feelings, and I really love that stuff. And which is weird again because this is the episode where John drops an 1,000-ton anvil on Scorpius's head. Like, Pilot says, you're dying. And then John says, yeah, Dargo tried to kill me. Perhaps an overstatement. Well, same net result. Is he an enemy you wish to harm? I don't even know why we're fighting. And then Pilot says, then rise above his behavior. Moya and I find it advantageous to avoid confrontation by aggression. John says, run away. And Pilot says, aggression feeds on opportunity. Remove yourself as a target and the pursuer will eventually tire. And then just like the best ending to all of that, which is John goes, you're very wise. And then Pilot says, I don't get out much, so I read. I just adore the idea of Pilot reading like John Steinbeck or just like some like Shakespeare when he's in his free time.
Yeah, it's what I loved about these meetings with the characters is that they all felt very sincere and like very informative investigations into these characters, but they also had kind of precision and simplicity to them that reminded us that these are John's interpretations of these people. Like that line from Pilot is not a way that Pilot would necessarily say that, but it is completely true to his character.
Yeah, we're seeing the whole show filtered through Crichton's head at this point. We're seeing the whole Team Moya filtered through his head, and it's great because you learn how he views everybody and how they're not just the occasionally like tropey versions of themselves that they can appear as in real life. Because he like talks to Jewel and she says some heavy stuff. It's not her that Jewel doesn't tell John about why she sabotaged the ship.
Correct.
She tells that to
Dargo.
Or well, she initially tells it to Chiana, and then she tells it to Dargo.
Well, yeah. So you want to talk about Jewel? Just her whole
situation? I do. Yeah.
So Jewel, at first, she's John's bed nurse, doctor, basically.
She kisses him on the forehead, and that's weird.
Gives him a little smooch on the forehead. I hope you get better. Take these little Frankenstein stick-em-ons, and that's gonna help you real nice.
Stick-em-ons. It's my favorite Digimon.
And then she's kind of feeling guilty about what's going on. She seems sad and like trying to get people to stop being mad. Then she admits to Chiana that she was the one who messed up the ship. Chiana gets pissed about that, really mad.
Yeah,
and then she's like, don't tell Dargo. Whatever you do, don't tell Dargo. Then Jewel goes to the little ship with Dargo, and she tells him, oh, it was me that did it. And he's like, I found this in the whatever, the controls, and it's a piece of her hair, which doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Like, why?
Maybe she was just in there. Like, maybe she just wasn't.
Well, but also it doesn't make sense. Like, how did she leave that much hair?
He didn't find a piece. Clump. He like left a lot.
It was like a clump of hair. Yeah. Anyway.
Maybe she's shedding.
I guess. So she gets mad. Or he gets mad. He says, well, what did you mean? I mean, what were you doing in here? And she says, and this is great. This is an amazing moment from Jewel. I know that I can be difficult, that no one wants to spend time with me. You're someone who I like. So I guess she likes him. Not like, but...
She enjoys his company.
Yeah. And I know that since the problems with your son and Chiana that you've preferred to be alone. And here I just thought, if this is so important to you that maybe if I learned a little about it, we might have something to talk about. That's so...
And he says, thanks for making the effort.
Yeah. Because it's like all she wants to do is for one person on the ship to be her friend.
It's kind of like the Cordelia chasing of this character, because for people who haven't seen Buffy or Angel, Cordelia Chase was a character who very much started as the like annoying person that everyone hates, and then very quickly after a certain point was like, I am so alone because I push people away, because I'm so mean to people, and I need like friends to like me.
Probably part of the plot of Mean Girls, right? I feel like it is.
Yeah. It's been a hot while since I've seen Mean Girls, but I liked that line because it kind of felt like Jewel was basically saying, I wish that I could pass the Whedon test with Dargo, because we really don't have we have no back and forth right now, and we could have one if I worked on your ship with you.
But yeah, I think that was my favorite part of the whole episode, is that we're finally getting some Jewel development, and I was annoyed. I was really annoyed at first when the revelation was that Jewel was the one who messed it up, because it's like, what are you doing to me? We're going to make this Jewel's fault, and like Jewel's stupid, and we're just going to do that all the time? Is that what this show's going to be?
Right.
And then they save it because she messed up, not because she's like oh no, I'm stupid, but because she was genuinely wanting to make a connection. And she's like,
Right, she didn't mess up because she was ignorant. She messed up because she was trying to be nice.
Right. And it's like, I guess her expertise is in biology, so it makes sense that she would mess up a ship. But, like, stop telling me that Jules a stupid character if she's, like, a genius character, you know?
Right, you can't have both of those things. You can't be klutzy and then also, or, like, dumb, and then also
I mean, I guess...
be the smart.
I mean, I guess you can have that, but it's like, why? Why not just have a smart female character?
Exactly, you can just do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're getting there with Chiana. Like, she's kind of, like, coming to her own as what she is and confident and all that, but we could also just have someone who's really smart because we don't have Zahn anymore.
Right.
Zan, whatever. We got corrected on Zan recently? Was that a thing?
When on Omens corrected us, I think.
Yes. I've heard both.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I was miffed by in this episode was the fact that Jewel and Chiana are just like yelling at each other in this really chattery,
childish,
talking over each other way.
Yeah.
And it's like, why do we have to have the two female characters on the ship yell at each other like that? But then it's kind of like, well, also John and Dargo are doing the same thing to each other. So it's just that these people are dysfunctional and it's not purely a gender thing going on. But I feel like there's some slight misuse of the Chiana Jewel dynamic.
I really want all of this arguing between the two of them to eventually lead to them becoming like Hollywood power couple style, where they're just like super against the rest of the people, and they're like, oh, now we fought so much and we learned to get over our differences and we're best friends. I want to get there, and I really feel like those characters have the potential to get there, but we're still in these like weird, dumb growing pains of just like, oh, the two women are gonna yell at each other, and they're not even yelling, like they're not ever yelling about like reasonable stuff. It's just like, you're annoying and you bother me a lot and you like talk back to people a lot and you're not very helpful. It doesn't feel like very meaningful things to hate somebody over.
Yeah, it just feels like they're yelling for the sake of it.
Yeah, which bums me out. But Jewel does eventually find the Qualta blade while digging through all of that delicious poo-poo. Batdren.
Batdren.
That was cool that they were like, oh, are there any other critters on this ship besides us, pilot? And he's like, oh, absolutely. There's like a parasite thing in here. And it's got like a, what is the word? The like mutually beneficial relationship
Symbiotic.
with Moya. Yes, I asked because I wanted to Google the line. A panoply of harmless parasites, which is it's a great sentence. Many serving symbiotic functions. Perhaps you're hearing the Hodian trill bat swarms. Which is, and then Jewel says, do these Hodian bat things, and that's where your thing came from. And then he talks about their effluvium spreads along Moya's inner hull and helps seal helps seal microscopic cracks. So effluvium is just like shit that comes out of you, like gross stuff that comes out of you.
I guess, just like
an unpleasant or harmful odor secretion or discharge.
Yuck, discharge is the grossest word in the world.
An unpleasant discharge. Yeah, that could mean everything. And then she's just walking through all of that, and then perfectly the sword is right in front of her in the thing, and she gets it, and Dargo puts it in the ship, and the ship, which they can only understand because of translator micro.
Yeah. Well, hold on. I want to talk about translator microbes, but first, just that sequence. This is what I want out of Jewel and Chiana, for them to have a cool little sequence like what Dargo and Chiana have with the sword, how they're throwing the sword up, slow motion.
Yep. Oh yeah, that was so awesome.
Yeah, but then you think about it, and all they really did was they passed the sword so that he could open the door. Yeah. And that's it.
It just was an action movie, like, cool, I'm going to throw it up while you walk behind me, and then it's going to land as you catch it. Like, it looks awesome, but it's like, you could have just turned around and passed it. It's unnecessary.
I guess, were the doors not working? Is that why?
Yeah, they said something about, like, the other ship turned off Moya so that they couldn't do anything automatically. Like, she could not open or close any doors, so all of them were closed, and they stayed closed.
And Dargo was the only one strong enough to open it, I guess?
Something like that.
Okay. Then that sequence makes sense to me now.
Yeah. I want more of that, but like with Chiana and Jewel.
Okay, so translator microbes. Here we go. This is so exciting what they did here, because at first it's like, why can't they understand what it's saying? They have translator microbes. And then there's some confusion about the idea of there being dead languages and how does that work. And then like...
Because it's clearly speaking Luxon.
Well,
and that's why Chiana's like, why don't you understand it? He's like, I don't speak ancient Luxon.
Right. So he does speak Luxon, though, probably. And I would imagine that he hears everybody in Luxon with his translator microbes. So that's something. So you can claim to speak your own language. And I guess you'd think that there would be some like words that would sound similar in Luxon and ancient Luxon, but I guess not. Anyway, so that's something. And then we get this idea that cultures try to preserve their ancient languages, which is a neat thing. But then if they're doing that, then why aren't those in the translator microbes? Because what we learn, which is cool, is that the microbes are drawing from, it seems like they're drawing from texts in that language to translate.
Yeah.
So Pilot is talking about how they don't have that many texts in ancient Luxon, and Dargo's like, well, you could use this or even anti-Luxon propaganda and all that. So he's naming, I don't know how to express this. I just think that that's a really cool idea that they're like, well, we can do this if we have more materials in this language. And so we now have an in-universe basis for how the translator microbes translate. It's like Google Translate, but it's in your microbes.
It needs a database to pull from.
Exactly. So we have that going on. And then we get the idea that you can have a translator microbe supplement, which is pretty rad. So mostly I'm just pleased that they're elaborating on translator microbes. And it kind of raises new questions, but not really.
Here's a question.
Okay.
If the translator microbe can only translate languages that it has from its database, then how does it have English? How does it have Earth language?
You did it.
I did it this time. Yay me.
You did it.
I won the sad game.
I don't know.
There's no answer to that. Or if you want to like really try and headcanon it, there is a part, like maybe like how the ancients know about Earth. Maybe the people who made the translator microbes database know about Earth.
Maybe. My headcanon, I think, is that the microbes kind of have two functionalities. They have that element where they can be a database. So that's something. But then I think they also probably have an element where maybe this doesn't work. Like they should be able to know within his microbes should be able to sense what he means, what his words mean.
Yeah.
But then how do the ones in other people know what he means? That's a great question. And that I have no answer to, unless there's like a level of communication between microbes. Like if that's what the microbes do, where they are sending a frequency of some kind to the other person's microbes that are like, these are what these words mean as this person's saying them. And then the microbes translate that from the frequency as opposed to translating the words themselves.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's the only thing I can think. And so then the element of coming from a database comes from listening to something that isn't someone who has microbes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that related to that, it's like the database updates itself when somebody who has a new language that they know is given microbes, and then all the other microbes.
Yeah.
So once it was put into John, it was like, oh, now we know English because John knows English.
Yeah, that's also a possibility.
Maybe it's like an internet sort of thing, where once you add something to it, everybody has it. Because the internet was still... the internet was not new at the point of this show. It was more just like still expanding in a big way. But anyways.
Yay!
That was fun.
It's back.
Yay, I always miss it. You know what's fun, though, is like, if I think to myself right now, like, oh, maybe we'll just never hear about this. There is never going to be an explicit episode that talks about translator microbes. They're only ever going to be things like this, where it's an episode completely unrelated to them, and then they just also happen to be explored because of the plot of the episode. Like, we're not going to like get a translator episode.
I would love an episode where it's the cat, like the crew, all the characters are sitting at a big table, and they're looking into camera, and they're like, hey, we're going to talk about translator microbes for the next 45 minutes.
I'd watch it.
Yeah, I'd watch it.
And they're like, we're going to all turn ours off. And then you just hear everybody in their own natural language. And you're like, oh, God. It's like really weird.
Yeah.
we get okay, so that's most of the like live action stuff. I loved the cartoon scenes just because I watched a lot of Looney Tunes and Chuck Jones stuff as a kid.
Me too.
And the like even more prescient to this episode reference was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was only a couple years earlier. And you and I watched that film a year ago.
Yeah,
a year
rewatched.
Or no,
it,
in like December. That was my first time. So that movie was 1988, and I kept thinking like, wow, this animation is clearly inspired by Chuck Jones and Looney Tunes, but there's also some of that like just like painterly style that some of the characters in Roger Rabbit have, and the like blending reality and cartoon is obviously that. And then that reference just goes 100% all the way with maybe the best scene of the episode, which is when John sees Aeryn's son in his head and talks to her.
I don't know if it was the best just because of how sexually confused it made me.
So what was sexually confusing about it? Because I thought it was sexually good. It was objectively good.
It's just like...
I don't know if I like a cartoon. Do I like a cartoon? Is she in skimpy, like, weird sheer clothing?
Kind of,
and then...
but also, like, it was intentionally meant... Like, the panoply... Thank you, pilot, for that word. The panoply of characters that she shuffled through was meant to kind of twist your expectations and be like, ooh, you think this? Are you not entertained? Are you not thinking this is sexy? Like the moment that was Hillary Clinton, right?
I believe
that
so.
She popped into for a second there.
Which hello relevant. Hello weirdly freakishly relevant.
15 years ago.
Yeah, she had like longer hair and everything. Yeah. Or not much, whatever. There was Hillary Clinton. There was Marilyn Monroe, which is where the "Happy Birthday, Mr. Astronaut" comes from. And then there was, I was going like, oh, the way that she's drawn, like she might as well just be Jessica Rabbit. And then she's like, what if he like picks up the cartoon pencil and erases her and then draws her again, and she is Jessica Rabbit. And I'm like, okay, all right, they get it. She's exactly Jessica Rabbit.
She's Madonna at one point. She's Baywatch.
Yep. Baywatch is the one that he stops on. He's like, huh, you want to rescue me? This is nice. What was I going to say? The Jessica Rabbit thing, she even says, like, I'm just drawn that way. Like, that whole line. I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way. Good stuff. And then she says, you at least use some imagination. Can they?
The script, by the way, calls it Aeryn Reagan. The Clinton.
That was Nancy Reagan.
Nancy Reagan, I guess.
That actually, I think that made sense to me when I was watching it. I forgot. Yeah. But this was the Clinton administration, right? During this show?
No.
2001? No, Bush just got it. Yeah. He just got, whoa, cool. So the beginning of the show was the Clinton administration.
Yeah.
Neato. And then she does all of the different scenes, and then he's like, can you do that Sharon Stone thing, Basic Instinct?
It's just like, why?
Why? You could... It's like, I love the way that John's brain works, where he can have, like, in his own head, he could make any sexual fantasy happen, but instead he wants to just recreate movie sexy characters. And it's like, you could just make her, like, herself and, like, naked, and then just be like, cool, that's what I wanted to see. But instead he's like, no, I want to see this scene that when I was 13 made me feel interesting things because Sharon Stone turned her legs in a way that you could see her chotch for, like, 1 second.
Oh my God. But yeah, and also, like,
I'm sorry.
Let's just be real here for a second. When Aeryn turned back into her real self and was like, cool, for a second I thought it was another scantily clad character that she was doing. And then she's like, cool. And it was like, what? Oh, that's right. This is how they dress her in this show.
Well, because that was, like, her season 1 and 2 outfit.
Yeah.
I feel like she's got, like, especially when we're going to talk about the choice, like, her outfits have been changing a lot lately. But that was just like, oh yeah, I remember being like, that outfit is so stupidly skimpy, and it only makes sense because she's a Sebastian, but like, damn, she just looks like she's wearing...
pure midriff.
Yeah, it's 100% midriff for 100% teens. It was weird. It was a little Juicy Juice reference for the folks at home.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hijinks between... Cartoon Dargo and Cartoon Crichton, painting wormholes on canyon faces, a la Roadrunner.
All of that was
Wile E.
really
Coyote.
smart. I don't necessarily want to rehash it too much, but I do like all the cartoon sequences were genuinely really funny, I thought.
No, yeah. I'm not trying to go into them. There was like little seconds that I was like, oh, that's cute. Like the free pizza and beer, and then John being like, lock up the women and hide the fried chicken, which is a weird line.
It was a weird line.
Talking about how Artie Goldstein stole his bike as a kid, and then he went to his house and beat him up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also really appreciated the live action, but still a dream cartoony stuff. Anthony Simcoe having a lot of fun. Again, we get to see his comedic chops, which is nice. Like the moment where it's like Aaron's like, Dargo, stop chasing him. And then Dargo has a weird look and he's like, nope. He keeps chasing him. And then that final confrontation where John's in the chair reading the sports news with the cigar.
I thought it said sports Star Wars.
I think it said
like,
sports,
that's all the things
sports
like...
stars.
And
there's like the rake and the bucket and the banana peel and all that.
The
really
bear
fun.
trap, and then the hole that he stands over for
Bear
like 1
trap,
second and goes, uh-oh. Yeah. That's all in there. That stuff I actually liked more than a lot of the cartoon stuff because it felt like it was more bespoke. It was like, oh, someone really worked on that. Someone made that prop instead of just like, oh, they animated this whole thing. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Not to take credit away from the people who worked probably very hard on that animation stuff, but I'm just saying, this show is already a live action cartoon, so it doesn't even feel that weird for it to have the animated stuff. Didn't even need to do that, and then Jewel finds the blade. John gets called an astronaut at some point, or it says like astronaut on the side of a thing, and then the last scene is really, really, really weird. Do you remember the last scene?
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I believe this is the last scene. Let me just fast forward through this. Yeah. Where Dargo and John are sitting by the window talking about things.
Oh, yeah.
And he's, do you have the thing in front of you? Because I feel like it would be fun for us to perform this.
Yeah, let's do it. Give me a line that I can search for to jump right to it.
I know you're out there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be Dargo and you can be John.
Okay.
Creighton. Good. Creighton, I know you're out there. If you won't talk to me, can you at least just listen? Somehow saying I'm sorry seems so inadequate.
We'll get through it.
I've so much rage inside. So many things. Sometimes I just need to control it better.
Well, now would be a good time to learn. You got a baby ship to feed.
It's a curse, John. A warrior heritage. My instincts.
You just gotta know when to control them, bro.
We have a code. Aggression against an ally entitles retribution.
Dargo, look at me. There is nothing that would ever make me take revenge on you.
And then they like kind of bro fist, and then Dargo says, "Thank you."
Well, they do like a Tarzan hand touch.
Yeah,
hand. Yeah. Like they decide that it's not manly enough to touch palms, and so they have to do the fist thing.
That's the only cinematic version of the like awkward "I wanted to go for a high five and you wanted to go for a fist" kind of thing that I've ever seen. But okay, but it works out
through a wall of glass.
Yeah, it's even more separated. And then, when you were dead, did you know you were dead? I mean, no. What went through your mind? What did you see?
Buddy, that would be impossible for me to explain to you.
And then Dargo sighs, and John looks out the window, and the whole outside world.
Crazy.
It's so. If we didn't know that, like, John kind of has his shit together right now, then that would be as scary as like him being like, I'm fine, Scorpius isn't in control, and then looks at the mirror and it's Scorpius. He's just like, my world is a cartoon now. Like, that's kind of fucked. It's kind of unfortunate, dog.
Oh, man.
It's a really strange but like on-brand way to end this episode, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's Revenging Angel. Magellan, could you read me the background information, please?
Sure. This is the fourth and final episode of the series in which Rigel does not appear. Yay!
Rigel we only get Rigel from now on.
I love Rigel.
He's the best.
While he does not appear on screen in A Perfect Murder, he has one brief voiceover line. Okay, so there's an episode called Prefect Murder.
A Prefect Murder, yeah.
Originally, Dargo walked the catwalk 3 times. On the missing time, director Andrew Prouse played a stunt Crichton who replaced John before a catastrophic fall. What does that mean?
There was a catwalk scene where they walk on a catwalk.
Uh-huh.
And on the missing time, that's the first part that I'm already confused by.
Yeah, I don't even know what that fact means, but there you go.
Yeah, okay.
The animation was done by Yodam Gross Yodam Gross EMTV, a company founded by the father of show composer Guy Gross. Nice. Gross's music for the animation sequences was influenced by Looney Tunes composer Carl Stalling.
Yeah, the music for that stuff was great.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. To stand in for her animated counterpart, Claudia Black wore a stunning outfit to give Ben Browder his eye lines. Her character moved like a Japanese anime character due to the lead animator being Japanese.
What? They put anime in my Farscape, finally!
That would be... If it was a pure anime episode of Farscape, that would be pretty crazy.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah. Each of the animated actors were given a framed cell showing their character with Osmotunes on the top. So I guess it's like a memento or something? Or just to see what they looked like. Some of the storyboards for the animated sequences were created by Star Toons directors John McClenahan, John Griffin, and Dave Pryor. The crew worked on such Warner Brothers series as Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, and Pinky and the Brain. Oh yeah. I'm a big Animaniacs fan, y'all.
I am a big Tiny Toons fan.
I've seen a little Tiny Toons. I also love me some Pinky and the Brain. Love that. 3 notable outtakes. Oh man, yeah. From this episode are included in the second blooper reel, all involving Anthony Simcoe. In the first, by the way, if you haven't seen this blooper reel, all of these are hilarious. In the first,
I haven't.
Simcoe ad-libs a little child's voice as he tells Jewel he threw away his Qualta blade.
I think Dargo did a bad thing.
What did you do?
I threw away my Qualta blade.
I'm gonna kill you!
I know I'm bad. I'm naughty.
In the second, following the scene in which one of Dargo's tentacles falls off after being defeated by John, Simcoe proceeds to ad-lib an impromptu lesson in acting in science fiction, cracking up the crew as he demonstrated sexual ambiguity.
Many of you kids have written to me in your letters and emails how it is that you can act in science fiction. Well, there are 3 key emotions that you need to know about. One is anger, and it's displayed like this. Grr. The other one is happiness, which is more of a smiling thing. But the third and key to playing in science fiction is sexual ambiguity. And that's played like this.
In the third, shot during the scene in which Dargo recites the names of his ancestors, Simcoe breaks into laughter when he nearly says tray table instead of one of the names.
I am Ka Dargo, son of Leighton, grandson of Rexar, and I am the great-grandson of Ka Dargo Traitor. I am his namesake.
I was gonna say tray table.
That outtake reel's hilarious.
Is that on YouTube?
Yeah. We'll watch it during the break.
People should find that. Oh, excellent. Very excellent. And yeah, like I said, there's nothing from the illustrated companion on this episode because they devoted a whole section later in the book to talking about the animation process, which I'm not going to read because it's probably super technical, and I don't want to read ahead in this book because it has information about later episodes. Mm-hmm. So that's going to do it for Avenging Angel, folks. We'll be right back to talk The Choice.
You can choose which one to put in.
I really hated the first delivery. I was like, no, don't end on that. The Choice.
The Choice.
Hello, escapers, and welcome to the Moyabag, where I, your host, Alan, read your feedback. Today we're going to try reading this feedback in a different order than usual. Starting with the Reddit thread, which you can find as always at reddit.com/r/Farscape. We only got 3 comments on the last episode. I totally understand that y'all are very busy, and we got a good long one in here, but you're slacking, subreddit folks. Come on. The first comment is from user Doc Carlack, who says, "Scratch and Sniff is my favorite episode. I've seen it 3 times one day. Shame that the opening jazzy beat wasn't in a soundtrack." I appreciate that this user also spelled favorite with a U, suggesting to me that they're from the UK. So rock and roll, our UK listeners, you're all very wonderful. Domain 101 replied, "Totally agree. The non-linear storytelling, zany characters, embellished storytelling, and John and Dargo waking up in a window? Hands down one of the best and most rewatchable episodes of Farscape. And I agree." We got a nice long one from Blue Blaze Spear, who says Scratch and Sniff does something interesting by framing the story with an unreliable narrator scenario, but then we also never really see the story from any other point of view to get some sense of what parts of John's version can be trusted. Thusly, we, like Pilot, should probably not consider that it's particularly truthful. If you're still looking for that sci-fi based medical drama, Mercy Point is out there. It was short-lived, but it was decent. I am sure there's a sci-fi medical drama out there. Yeah, we've mentioned Mercy Point on the show before, but I think I'm more interested in a sci-fi police procedural. Because a medical drama is like, okay, I don't like a lot of medical dramas. I used to like House. I had a phase. Everyone had a House phase. But we all grow out of it eventually. During the original run, the fandom stayed pretty steeped into the world of Farscape, and I don't recall anybody not instantly remembering who Furlough was. I guess I can only speak for myself and only through the haze of time, but I remembered who she was right away. While I'm not a big Stark fan, this is, to me, the best line he ever gives. I have no prayer for that. Allen rightly pointed out that all of this talk of wormhole weapons always seemed suspect, and when John actually harnessed it as a weapon, Stark's reaction was a good representation of the visual horror that was shown to us in the form of Crichton essentially destroying a very large ship by firing a chunk of star at it. Yeah, I briefly paid lip service to that line because I wrote it down in my notes, and yeah, it's... the wormhole stuff, now that we've seen what it can do, is incredibly scary. And their final paragraph, I enjoyed Revenging Angel, but this is a weird little lull in the season's pace that might have been better off earlier in the running order before the plot gets moving. And while the choice is a heavy, good, visually interesting Aeryn episode that addresses things that need addressing, it feels like all the important stuff from it could be condensed into a really good 15-minute episode. That's a really smart point, actually. I think there was a lot of just like emotional filler in this episode that we're going to talk about. It's so good and I hate rushing past it, but at this point I'm ready for them to keep things rolling at the macro level. I think I could have embraced the choice more if it weren't part of a 2-episode break between Infinite Possibilities and Fractures. Without Revenging Angel in there, this would have been just one episode that tackles the elephant in the room and we could move on to the next thing a bit more seamlessly. Thank you, Blue Blaze Spear, and thank you to everyone who posts on our Reddit threads every week. We're continuing this thing of going backwards. We're going to read the email that we got this week next from Dax Static.
I put a shot to your system.
Dax says, Greetings, Allen and Magellan. Hope all is well with the podcast crew. Thank you, Dax. We're doing very well. It's summertime. We were having fun. And we're watching Farscape. I couldn't ask for anything better. This week we have the infamous cartoon episode, which I seem to remember having a lot more animation than it really does for my first viewing. I had forgotten how much the live action intersected into it and thought it would be more like 95% cartoon. We'll bring this up in the episode discussion, and it is a good point. We get a good look at how Dargo starts getting into his Lux and Hyper Rage as he gets frustrated trying to get his ship to work. He pretty much puts John into a coma, but I don't think that Dargo is fully enraged, or he might have killed John. However, since John is unconscious in his dream, Dargo is still trying to kill him, and that's why he's chasing him. In real life, we see that while Dargo is plenty mad, he's not full-on berserker like we saw him in the past. So while I'd like to think that after everything he and John have been through together that he'd believe John when he said he didn't tamper with the ship, at least he was able to keep himself from killing John. I guess there's a little bit of character development there for Dargo, along with his acceptance of Jules' explanation for why she was the one who did the tampering. There's a point in here about Chiana starting to think of herself as an adult, especially in regards to Jules, who she sees as a kid. Dax also points out that when John does his Letterman list, he only lists 9 things, which, hey, I am also receptive of these things sometimes. So while Harvey insists on getting revenge, John tries everything to avoid it, but then finally gives in and blows up Dargo, only to find himself looking at his own grave. He realizes and tells Harvey to stop distracting him from what he really feels, that he loves Aeryn. This is the final item on his list. While Love and Aeryn were number 2 and 3, the more specific I Love Aeryn was number 1, and that gets him to wake up. I think this is quite an admission of his true feelings to himself, because remember that this is the John that has not been with Aeryn for months, and hasn't been sleeping with her nightly like the other John, who is now actually dead. In fact, this John only knows of having sex with her once? From when they went to the fake Earth back in Season 1. Did they sleep together or even kiss since then before he was cloned? But he knows he truly loves her. Dax was also happy to see characters leaving at the end of the choice, which we're going to discuss soon. Speaking of creepiness, we start with Crace and Stark blaming each other for Aeryn being on the planet instead of the ship. Stark says, Aeryn wants me around, she wants me to watch over her, she wants me to protect her from people like you. Boy, his level of creepiness is really going way up. He's starting to remind me of Lenier pining away for Delenn on Babylon 5, if you've ever seen that show. I have not, but I keep hearing it's kind of an easy show to go to after Farscape because it's similarly like weird sci-fi, but I don't know if I'm super interested in watching it right away. What do people think of Babylon 5? Is that a show we should watch? or discuss at some point. It's technically on the list of shows that we want to watch, but who knows. Dax also said that these 2 episodes are excellent companions to each other. In each, the main characters go on individual journeys to find what they must admit to themselves. John now can't wait to get back with Aeryn and love her. Meanwhile, Aeryn just said goodbye to John and is ready to move on without him. Seems like the perfect time for both crews to reunite, don't you think? Please tell me the crews are going to reunite soon, please! Finally, one last thing, you guys asked about the name Farscape. Well, I always thought it was a play on the words farce and escape. I think at the beginning, the producers thought this would be more of a comedic show, what with puppets biting people and all that. A sort of anti-Star Trek, with the characters having less morals, and of course the idea that most of them are escaping prisoners. I think you meant to say escaped prisoners here. Another hidden play on words that I like, and I freely admit that this might be my imagination, but I like it, is the name Aeryn's son. Since John arrives in this far-off place in the galaxy he's thrust into a lot of weird and action and turmoil, Aeryn becomes his safe place, or rather his air and sun, in the dangers and cold of the vacuum of space, you will. At least I like to think so. That's enough for this week. Looking forward to hearing you two and your thoughts on these episodes. I really like that read, air and sun. I don't know whether or not that's intentional, but I'm gonna go ahead and just like enjoy that, and we can all pretend that was true. What do you all think? That's like a really interesting point, Dax. Thank you for the email. And now finally onto Twitter, where we get these memos every week from regarding Chul and Gianna going to save the boys and how much you wanted to see that. There's a full-on ladies being badass episode in season 4 called Bringing Home the Beacon, and it passes the Bechdel test 27 times, which sounds incredible. I don't know enough about this episode theme-wise to comment on it. That's how much it grosses me out. This is in regards to SNS, which is Scratch and Sniff. Things just go wrong right away, which is something I think I said, and then she says that's Farscape in a nutshell. And she said that in the episode they had to tell Pilot that story because they wanted to get back on Moya because they were broke, but he wouldn't let them, which makes sense. Francesca is small in real life. Small, dark-haired, and actually quite pretty, which is funny because considering next season she's in 8-inch platform heels, which sounds awesome. Regarding the other episode that we discussed last week, I didn't remember Furlough because I didn't rewatch Till the Blood Runs Clear. I also don't really care about Jack. Bingle bongle dingle dangle yickety doo yickety da ping pong lippy tappy too ta. That's not what you said for Jack's name, but the people who've seen New Who will get the reference. I'm assuming there's got to be some sort of crossover between Doctor Who fans and Farscape fans. Neither of us have watched any Doctor Who. I think I watched like one episode of the most recent season and I was very confused and unhappy with it. And I've been told I don't really need to get into that show. So, Crace Stark pairing. Rigel got a gun because he stabbed a Cherd, and for production reasons. Furlough and Jack being antagonistic could have been played up a bit more. Wormhole weapons, that's your new thing. Also, unstable wormholes can kill you and trap you inside. There's a Hamilton reference in here, which I appreciate. And do you understand now why I love Claudia Black so much? Also bigger things, but this becomes a big thing, a massive thing. Van Browder pulled his hamstring, Anthony Simcoe passed out multiple times, and the pyrotechnic team let Claudia let off fireworks. This show sounds like a farce. Farscape. There you go, I did it. Who gives a shit about whether Aeryn loves the real John? Like, fuck, she loves both of them, she just chose the one that loved her more and wasn't as obsessed with wormholes by. Thank you, Omens. Aeryn as a character has become more peaceful and compassionate, but she can still kill you, which is something I said, and then she says, and that never changes. Don't worry about me, I've never felt better. 1,000 hearts died. And Aeryn let her grief take over, and we died some more. Daedalus and Icarus have become very important analogs to John and Aeryn as the series goes on as well. John is Icarus, trying to fly too close to the sun, and Aeryn is Daedalus, holding him back and keeping him safe. That's like another good read. Y'all are killing it with the good reads of the show this week, and every week. That was the Moyabag. Let's get to our discussion of The Choice. And we're back! The second episode that we watched this week was The Choice, which was written by Justin Monjo, directed by Rowan Woods, and it aired August 17th, 2001. Hi, Magellan. What did you think of The Choice, the emo fest that is The Choice?
Well, you kind of took the words right out of my future talking, but I'm going to give it a go. I thought that it had a visual quality to it that I found really fascinating. And they were doing something stylistically that is different enough from what Farscape is usually doing that it kept me engaged for most of the episode, but at the same time, the plotting and a lot of the characterization in this episode was just, it's like, come on. It's just a lot of, come on. I mean, we'll talk about it, but I think the moment that epitomizes this episode to me more than anything else is Aeryn standing in this high-rise apartment window, like a full-body window, like the one that what's his name? Oh no, Mace Windu, like fell out of or something in Star Wars, right? He got pushed out a window, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it kind of reminded me of that window. And then they're looking down, or she's looking down on this like Blade Runner sci-fi cityscape, and she just starts yelling, Crichton!
Yeah, that's
Crichton!
Yeah.
But like with no emotion whatsoever.
It's just a little flat.
And it's like this scene looks great, and you're giving me nothing.
That moment in particular was like, oh, this is not very affecting or effective also. It's a little bit disappointing. And I just, the way that I managed to enjoy this episode was to accept the edgelordiness of it and to remember that it came out in a time when this like specific brand of edginess and of like, oh my God, look how sad everything is. Like, aren't you into this like tragic sadness, which permeated a lot of media of the early 2000s? Accepting that and then enjoying the parts where Claudia Black acts the fuck out of this role with her eyes especially and gets some good like yelling at her mom stuff. All of that is great. And the B plot was a lot of fun. It was weirdly good considering that the A plot was like potentially great. I also just don't think that you could have done this type of episode much better than this, because it's like they have to like check off a lot of boxes. Like Zalax needs to be taken care of in whatever way possible. We need to learn the rest of her backstory, and we need her and Aeryn to get to a point where they have a conversation, and we need Aeryn to start and finish grieving over Crichton all in one episode. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, this is sort of the downside of splitting the crews, because earlier we got to sort of revel in being able to develop John in two very different ways and have two groups that are doing very Farscape-y episodes, but totally different flavors of Farscape. And we got to have them both at the same time. And we got the perfect palate cleanser for John's death in Revenging Angel, or not perfect, but you know what I mean. Like it's along the right lines where there's cartooniness, and there's kind of a return to roots in terms of relationships. So John and Dargo were revisiting that relationship, and we're kind of looking at other characters and making sure everybody has a moment to kind of shine and do something fun. And that's what you want after a death episode, to kind of set things back to default or to where we're going to be going forward. But since everybody's not in the same place, we have to like deal with how much negativity we're steeped in over in this other plot, and the Revenging Angel style episode has no effect on where the characters are in the other plot because they're somewhere totally different. So we're stuck with just this pure like death and despair and gray nonsense, and it's not mitigated by anything, which I think is what you were saying. Like, they have to accomplish a lot to wrap all of that up so that they can reconvene with Moya, and I think that's why I found it over the top and just kind of unnecessary.
Excessively bleak is how I kept describing it.
That's a good way to put it.
I think it's been both a benefit and a detriment to this show by having the crews split, because while we've talked about how thematically the split has led to them being able to explore different ideas and plots and character relationships that weren't possible before, it's also led to the writers feeling like, oh, we're writing a talent episode, we don't need to have that much humor in here. And that's a bummer, because Farscape at its core is a show that blends heart and humor in a very big way. And so like this episode, save for some of the stuff in the B plot, felt very humorless, or at least like not self-acknowledgingly humorous.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that Talon episodes have been devoid of humor, because I think we liked Meltdown a lot for its moments of odd humor. And even the past 2 episodes had moments of levity, but I think that's the point, is that the thing that's been distinguishing the Talon episodes is that they also have a heavy bleakness to them, and it's here that the writers seem kind of taken by that bleakness and lured by it away, right, like what you're saying, from any moments of levity or release.
And I think that is just a thing that now that we're going to finally bring the crews back together, we're going to see a return to form for the old style of the show, where these different tones don't have to be so different, I guess. Because this episode is basically, and this is part of why I didn't want to read the summary for this one, is it's kind of 2 stories. On one hand, you have Aeryn's son is on this planet because she's grieving for her lost lover, and the rest of the crew goes down to find her, which just the fact that she starts this episode on the planet, again, reminded me of the episodes from season 1 where it's like, Dargo's pissed. He's going to figure shit out. And I like this idea that the characters on this show, when they need to sort things out, like sometimes they can talk it through, and that's usually how things get done. But because they are adults and because they're flawed, not human beings, but they're flawed, individuals, sometimes they try to cope with their problems by running away, which is the most like Farscape thing in the world. Aeryn goes to this planet, the planet of Valdoon, just to not be around people, and gets this high-rise apartment and just sits in it and drinks and sits out the window contemplating suicide and contemplating her life. And that's like a very tender idea, that you want to just be by yourself when things are hard, and instead of like what you ultimately realize is best, which is like seeking the comfort of others and learning to move on. All of that stuff is really great to me. And then when the rest of the crew goes to find her, they also realize that Zalak's son is on this planet, this refugee planet, which I want to talk about. Because on this planet, everybody that is there, and we're primarily in this, is it a hotel or is it an apartment complex? I kind of was confused by that.
I think it's just, an apartment complex. It's just like a building. I don't think they necessarily explain it too much.
Right. And all of the people there are really weird, and someone calls them all a bunch of Starks. I think it's Rigel. Like that kind of stuff is great. And then they're walking around like the lobby of this area, and everyone is just like offering soothsayer advice and talking about like, oh, I know what you did, and I know who misses you, and I can talk to the dead. And that obviously very immediately has an effect on Rigel, which is great to see that Rigel, like, we're reminded that he has a past and he has a woman in his life that was important to him. Like that stuff is all very it's like little moments of development for him and for the world that I liked a lot. And I was wondering what you thought of the choice to make it a refugee planet or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I consistently like the most about this episode, is that the planet was really fleshed out and had a very distinct character to it. And I always relish planets in the show that have that, because it feels like it's not Farscape's main priority all the time to world build. I think character building is definitely a huge priority, and world building in terms of like the philosophy or the operations of the world, in terms of wormhole technology and what that means, or the idea that there's a impending war between the Sebastians and the Scarans, so that level of world building. But there's not usually a lot of on the ground, this is the life of people who aren't wrapped up in bigger galactic issues. So it's always cool to me to see that happen in an episode. And this is also a different planet than we've seen before, because it's very grungy. It's a very specific kind of people living here. They're all, like you're saying, they're all odd and mystical, and that's again a part of Farscape that is not explored very often. The fact that there's like magic in this universe. So yeah, I liked that, and sort of what the planet was looking like, and all the designs. There was a ton of costume and makeup work here, and it was all really great. The moment where Aeryn saw those 2 skeleton goblins making out with each other in the alleyway, that was cool.
Although, again, a moment of like, do you want me to take this seriously? Because she immediately gets sad and goes, oh, I wish I could kiss my partner in a weird alleyway.
Yeah, I remember when we were raptor face bald people.
So that's like, that epitomizes how I felt about a lot of this episode.
Yeah. And then we got a little bit of like, there was a diagnosis there, which was a cool aspect of it. Did you see that?
I did not.
There was like, yeah, there was a, like maybe a shot where somebody was talking to, I think someone was talking to Rigel and Stark and said something about like, oh, he uses the body for his medical stuff. And then it cuts and there's like a diagnosis in the back. Like,
It was like, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's
yeah, very full environments. The set work was also really cool. The lighting was great. All of that, the sort of practical stuff going on in this episode, I liked a lot. And then the the fuzzier stuff, I was not a fan of.
I think there's like 3, maybe 4 scenes that we definitely need to get to. Because we basically said all of our thoughts on this entire episode, but there's an important one I want to get to. And before that, we got to talk about the weird baby fetus talks to the dead monster.
Yeah. Oh, that's my favorite part of the episode.
Is that, you're serious?
Yeah, it's just like so he comes in. Can we talk about her fake dad for a second?
Oh yeah, not exactly Talon Lazak, yeah.
Yeah, I have this toy. It's called a Monster Popper.
Okay.
And the way it works is it's like a little plastic toy, and it has like a foam ball as an eye, and it's like a little alien guy, and you can squeeze his tummy and his eye shoots out like really fast. And that's kind of what he looked like to me, is that he was a toy that if you squeeze him, the eye pops out. Or one of those like grotesque things that they used to have in toy stores where if you squeeze it, part of it gets all gooey and like big.
Yeah.
So that was kind of his whole thing.
And you want to buy one of them, and then you do, and then it like immediately leaks,
like,
and it's just a gross thing to have in the house.
Yeah, exactly. Did we believe for a moment that he was her dad for real?
No, not really, because it's way too easy. They like set it,
Yeah.
and they don't ever try to get you to believe it. Like, the point is that they're trying to get Aeryn to believe it, but even she's like, I didn't believe this for 1 second. So it just kind of felt like a throwaway, like, here's a character to get her into a scene where she's going to talk with her mom. Because that's, again, what we're trying to get to with this whole episode. And using it as an excuse of, like, oh, I'm going to kill this guy in front of you so that you can see me kill your dad again. Like, no, you don't. It feels weirdly incompetent of her to try and do that and have it be such a shoddy attempt.
Yeah, it really does.
Aeryn. I didn't believe it for a second. I also it didn't make any sense to me that, and like, Aaron's parents were both Sebastian. Am I not right about that?
Well, okay. First of all, I want to read this line from Aeryn. So she says, wasn't killing Talon once enough, but did you have to kill him in front of me? Is that what was missing? When I first met him, I knew he wasn't my father, but he knew all these details about you and me. Blah, blah, blah. So she is like totally understanding what's going on, and Zalix is like really bizarre way to take revenge, like you were saying. And then it's kind of like, I didn't get Zalix at all in this episode. But to speak to the question that you just asked, if he was a Sebastian, he says that he had his face altered.
Oh, sure. Okay.
That's what he was saying, which I didn't believe. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say how much they were trying to convince us that he was her father, but I don't know. Because then he pulled out the blood spectrometer and he's like, hey, take a look. We have the same DNA.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think they could have totally done a plot where her dad comes back in some way. This is totally not the episode to do it, is what I was getting at.
Right. Well, because it's just so stupid that she gets to the planet and then like the first guy she talks to and she's like, I want to talk to my dad. And he's like, well,
I'm your dad.
You're in luck. I'm your dad.
I'm your daddy. That's what he says. It's a weird callback line. But we should also, talk about, speaking of like weird aliens, the Seer Croesus.
Yeah. Right. The Seer. Okay. So he brings in this little like football, and then he opens it up, and the stitching breaks open, and inside is just
the grossest thing. Creases. My beautiful baby son.
No.
He's my boy.
No.
Creases for people. Okay. I mean, people have watched the episode. You know what? Okay, so what did he look like to you? How would you... You're like, Magellan describes funny aliens. How would you describe him?
Okay. There's a specific thing that I'm thinking of, and I can't think of it. So I think I'll just say that he looks like the alien that bursts out of the guy in Spaceballs, and then he goes, hello, my baby. Hello, my...
Oh, so he looks like the alien from Alien.
Alien, right. The alien from Aliens. Except, like, big head T-Rex version, and he also looked like a politician.
He looked like he's going to tell you about the GOP.
It just looked like somebody who's going to lie to me.
Yeah, which is weird because he's trying to tell you like true things about the people who are dead in your life. He looks like if you slathered a Richard Nixon in KY jelly. Realistically,
specifically the Nixon head from Futurama.
Correct. Yeah. Which is appropriate because Futurama is Farscape. For me though, the comparison I kept thinking of was if people at home have seen the original Total Recall film, the 1980s one, Quado, who's one of the weirdest back half of that movie characters ever, is a guy that lives inside. It's an alien that lives inside of another guy's chest. So the guy that is walking around is just a body, and then Quado is the brain, basically. It's really weird. And if people know what that looks like, then you're like, yep, that's what we're talking about. That's totally the showpiece, like effect of the episode, though, and I appreciate that they're just like, hey, check it out. We're gonna wheel him out and sit him down.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't do much except give Aeryn the ability to see John Crichton in like a wife beater and jeans.
It's just his head, I think.
There was a part where he was like hanging out with her in bed, but that was just like her dreams of him.
Yeah, she was like hallucinating him throughout the episode.
I just like that right after the scene where she sees the two people kissing, she goes to her room and sees him in his beater and jeans, and she's like, oh, this is what I was looking for. And you're like, that's the default Crichton state that she really likes. It's like super dad mode. Says something about her. But yeah, all that stuff was really weird. And it gave this episode this very weird like 80s sci-fi vibe, in addition to the Blade Runner stuff, which it wears on its sleeve like it's nobody's business. But I really, really think we need to get to the very famous, the very much talked about Ophelia scene, referring to both the character from Hamlet as well as the moment in which Aeryn's son goes off the deep end. Yeah. It's a challenging scene that a lot of people have been excited for us to talk about, and I think it's time to get to it. So at its fundamental level, what happens in this scene? Because it basically involves Stark and Crais and Aeryn, and some weird sex stuff happens.
She's basically yelling at both of them for leching after her in a way that's very kind of shocking, and I guess it's founded in what's going on in other episodes, but it feels kind of out of left field. The Stark stuff maybe not as much.
The Stark stuff has its basis in scenes as far back as when Zahn was going to die, and he was like, oh, Aeryn's beautiful. Like that stuff has been seeded for a while, and some of the early Talon stuff also gave us the idea that maybe Crais is the third person in the love triangle between Aeryn, John, and himself. But we kind of established in that episode that, like, at the end of the day, he's not really trying to do that. Maybe he has those thoughts, maybe they're subconscious, whatever. But the point is that Aeryn is preying on that potential weakness and basically trying to assault him in a way that, like, kind of puts him on edge, because she's inside of, like, a prison door, which is just, like, the door of her apartment, but it's, like, kind of, like, got a slat for people to look through. And Stark's like, oh, you need to come out, like, oh, we both like you a lot, and then she comes out, and I think we should find these lines because they're pretty huge. So let's find the line.
I have it right here.
Oh, excellent.
So just the Aeryn part?
Yes.
Okay. So...
Or however much context you want to give it, yeah.
Yeah, so Crais is talking to her saying, Zalix is alive, Aeryn's telling everybody stop touching me, whatever, all that. And then Aeryn says, come on, Come on, Crace, you can tell the truth. There's a little question mark here in the script. And then she says, no, that's all right. He wants me. Isn't that right? You always wanted to take me from Crichton, and now's your chance. Now here's your chance. Then she says, and you know what, Bylar? If I squeeze my eyes closed tightly enough, you could be someone else. And then Crace makes a noise. And then she says, no, come on, right here, right now. Give it to me. Give me what you've got. And then Stark starts freaking out, and everybody starts freaking out, and then she yells at them.
No. The weirdest thing about that is that Tubu plays it kind of straight. Like, he kind of almost laughs for a while. He's like, oh, Aeryn, you're ridiculous. Stop. Jesus, stop. He, turns really quickly. And this show has dealt with that kind of, sexual dominance kind of thing. And the line that always gets to me is if I close my eyes tightly enough, then you could be someone else. Oh, it's just totally epitomizes the sliminess of this episode and its themes. I'm just like, everything sucks. She's in a bad spot.
I mean, it's right at the height of that same melodrama that's operating in a lot of other spots in this episode.
Right. We've never seen Aeryn this furious and out of control, I guess. But she takes care of she takes hold of the situation, and she's like, no, I can't, you're just lashing out with your sexuality, which is a thing that she's had to deal with for a while, and how she interacts with the other men on the ship, or with the men on the ship. I want Crichton to be back. I want the show to be happy again. This was the scene where I was like, no, I don't want this anymore. I want this to stop. I hate this. Although it does make for good storytelling. I'll say that. I just can't take a lot of this tone of the show. It's kind of killing me slowly.
Yeah, I agree.
But that was the last big scene that I thought we need to talk about. I just wanted to pay lip service to it and say that it made me really uncomfortable, but I thought it was well written, and I will always think about that scene when I consider Aeryn and Stark's relationship, as well as Aeryn and Crace. But it's important that the episode ends with Aeryn being back on the ship, and Xeox dies. So this kind of it cleans itself up really quickly, which is nice. And then Stark says, all right, I clearly am becoming a liability. I can't control my emotions with the rest of you. I'm out. I'm leaving. I'll come back at some point. For sure I'll come back. I'm alive. I'm fine. But I need to take a lot of time off to figure my shit out. So, bye, Stark. And I'm glad to see you leave. But I'm hoping you'll be back eventually with less drama and shit to bring to the show. That pretty much sums up the end of the episode, though, and then it kind of ends with, there was a great scene with Rigel. He flies up to Aeryn's room. That part's good. We got a good Rigel moment out of that. Aeryn has a makeshift terry cloth in her apartment, and that is the last note that I had here. And then Aeryn had a line that said, "I returned from the dead. Why can't he?" That was probably the best line of the episode. It was up there because she's talking about John. Yeah, but anyways, Magellan, could you get us to the background information for this episode, please?
Yes, I can. Okay, let's see. Thomas Holsgrove makes a brief cameo as a Diagnosian in the background on the planet's surface.
Ba-da-po.
Mario Haluvis took his first major role as the Seer. Dave Elsey was so impressed that he was eager to give Haluvis more work. That's cool. So more monster baby man.
Good.
Claudia Black asked David Kemper for a script that she could get her teeth into. She worked closely with Justin Monjo and Rowan Woods on the episode. Monjo had specifically asked to work on the episode that had Aeryn dealing with Crichton's death. That's something. It's just, I don't know. Monjo usually writes better episodes than this.
Agreed. And he's going to be writing whatever the future of Farscape is, I think.
Mm-hmm. In her final appearance as Zalek's son, Linda Cropper considers this to be her favorite episode, praising the Greek tragedy elements. Sure, why not? Rowan Woods fused design elements from Blade Runner with Gothic design to create the decaying atmosphere of Valdun.
We pointed out, there's the quote.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Stark was sent on his journey in this episode in order to allow for Paul Goddard to appear on stage at the Sydney Opera House.
I like to imagine that Stark the character, left to go perform on stage at the Sydney Opera House. That's funny to me.
Yeah. This episode marks Zan's final appearance during the season, albeit only her voice. I didn't even hear it. It
was probably during the voices in Stark's head when they were in the lobby.
Mm-hmm.
He's freaking out.
This is the only episode in the entire series where a real Crichton does not make an appearance.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Unusually, the first vision of Crichton that Aeryn has is of the elderly Crichton seen in the locket. even though that version of Crichton had supposedly never existed in this timeline. This seemingly validates Zahn and Stark's belief at the end of that episode that the alternate timeline continued to exist, separate of the current one, despite the events never occurring.
I believe that as soon as they said, hey, this was probably real to them, and also all of the stuff that's happening in the choice is in Aeryn's head, a lot of that, like all the Crichton stuff. So yeah, the old man Crichton exists in her head in some way or form, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, but time was reset. Whatever. That's time stuff.
Yeah,
so I don't
exactly.
really want to get into it. And that's the background info, my dude.
Coolio, my dude. There isn't much that you didn't say that's in the Illustrated Companion.
Great, thanks, my dude.
There's the Blade Runner stuff. There's Kemper talking about how great Claudia Black is. Here's a nice line regarding the Rigel stuff that we touched on very briefly. The choice also gave a great deal of work to the puppetry team as Rigel came to the fore. Rowan went to a lot of trouble to do the scenes in the marketplace down in the foyer of the hotel. It was full on for us in terms of getting Matt McCoy and his team moving through all those other characters. Rigel's just the tip of an iceberg of 2 or 3 people being wheeled underneath. Which, someone mentioned recently, like a relatively new listener, that they said, I really hope that you guys stop thinking of Rigel as a puppet. When I'm watching the episodes, I don't, but then as soon as I read the info, I laugh at the idea that this like regal asshole character is in real life being like wheeled around by 3 people constantly. That's like perfect to me.
Yeah, it doesn't consciously enter my mind when watching the show, but it's just something fun to think about. Yeah. Yeah,
and I want more Rigel. I'm actually like way into the Rigel development that's been happening this season, and his scene with Aeryn this episode was great.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I'd actually love to quote that part just because I think that's his little speech is great.
Yeah, could you find that?
Yeah, let me see if I can grab that. So Rigel like floats up to her somehow. I guess his chair can fly. I always think of it as like it can't fly and it can only hover, but I guess it can fly.
Exactly. I think it went approximately this high in Jeremiah Crichton. Why the hell do I remember that? Who knows? Who really knows?
He says, "Look, Aeryn, I know you're upset. I too had someone important in my life. Keller was her name." And then the script here says, "With sincere sorrow. I missed her for a long time, but I knew, as I'm sure you do, that self-sacrifice is not the answer. Look, I'm not like Crace or Stark. I'm not trying to save you or recreate with you. You can do whatever you like. But Crichton loved you, Aeryn. He wouldn't want his death to lead you here." And then it says, "A gust of wind buffets his hover chair and he huffs anxiously. Please, could we go inside this height?" And then Aaron's like, "No, you can't.
You can't come in here.
You can't come in here.
No
you
boys
can
allowed."
Just die.
It's a really touching scene.
Yeah.
And there's another note about that scene, specifically in here from Rowan Woods. "I love it when Rigel is a character of integrity and not just doing his Dr. Smith thing," Woods says, referring to the manipulative schemer from Lost in Space. "He has some beautiful moments, especially when he's trying to convince Aeryn to get off the ledge." The thing I wanted to say about that line is, like, I feel like so many sci-fi creators and like people who work on these TV shows reference and talk about Lost in Space. And I know Danger Mr. Robinson, but like, should I watch Lost in Space, folks? Because that show's like really, really old.
I would guess not.
I don't think it probably doesn't hold up unless you're just like, oh, look how cheesy these weird robots and this weird family is. But
right,
there's like a lot of obscure references to it in sci-fi. I think it just means that the people who make the shows that we like were teens or kids when that show was on.
Probably, yeah.
But that's life. Everyone has the shows that they grew up on. I love to think that someone's show that they're going to reference in 10 years is Farscape, and that's already happening. What with like Rick and Morty having both Claudia Black and Virginia Hay in an episode and that kind of thing. And like stuff like Futurama has plenty of Farscape references. I'd actually be interested in doing a bonus episode at some point on like the things that Farscape has influenced, because I think it's been long enough. We're about at the 15-year anniversary of a lot of these episodes, actually, approximately. So I think that's something to keep in the idea tank, which is a big tank on our ship that we keep ideas in. But that's pretty much the episode, and that's the background info. And I think now it's really, really, really sincerely time for Planet Netflix.
I'm not lying here.
I can't
say that I
couldn't lie to you about this, folks.
Next week, we're watching 2 episodes. The first is Season 3, Episode 18, Fractures. Moya picks up a badly damaged Leviathan transport pod carrying a Scaran, a Hynerian, and a Nabari, all escaped prisoners, and their hostage.
2 things I want to say about that episode. 1, I've heard that it's basically the finale of the stuff that happened in Infinite Possibilities, like the Crichton stuff. Or at least it's like some John development. I'm not sure. I've heard it's an important episode in terms of arc stuff. But also, that description makes it sound like the beginning of a really weird joke.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Like a Scaran, a Hynerian, and a Nabari all walk into a bar.
And then what?
Yeah. And the bartender says, "Ooh." And that's what he says.
We don't take no aliens in here. And they say, but you're from Mexico. And then the joke ends.
Good. We did it.
Yeah.
That's where it was supposed to go.
Yeah.
All right. Second episode, Season 3, Episode 19, I Yench, You Yench. Rigel and Dargo meet with Scorpius and Braca in order to negotiate Crichton's safe passage onto the command carrier.
I've heard that episode is a good Braca episode, weirdly.
Yay! I love Braca.
It's another Pinky Beecroft episode, another Matt Ford special. And the thumbnail on the Farscape Encyclopedia Project is Scorpius and Rigel hanging out at a bar. So, we didn't test, wee-you. Yay.
Fun.
Let's do some housekeeping.
Okay.
You can email ScapeChatz at scapechats@gmail.com.
Gmail.com.
Thank you. It's like, is there lag? Or you can also tweet at us at ScapeChatz on Twitter, and you can follow that and all that good stuff. We have a Reddit thread every week at reddit.com/r/Farscape, which has been popping off lately. Y'all in there are all wonderful, wonderful people.
Tapenade. Yum, yum, yum. Get some tapenade.
Get some empanadas to tapenade. And you can follow me on Twitter at Alan Ibrahim, spelled ALLENIBRAHIM. Magellan?
Yes?
Can you do your plugs for me, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
You can find me on Twitter at JustAFluke. That's JUSTAPFLUKE. And if you're wondering if I tweet, the answer is yes. Today I sent out a little tweet that said, "Shrimp my ride." Those are the kinds of things that you can enjoy on my Twitter.
I love your Twitter so much, and I love that you're not part of the nightmare that is like trying to be on Twitter. You're just like, I'm gonna throw some positive humor into the world, and that's great.
Yay.
It's a good account. I actually don't tweet very much. I mostly use it to like DM friends and work out plans and stuff. But we're both on there. It's great. It's a fun time. And this was a fun time, even though it was a little bit of a tricky one to record. Yes. So that was ScapeChatz, and let's get the Frel out of here.
Yeah, baby, we're dead.